I want to talk about what the real source of that humming noise is in the office.
That belongs to the Asian people who own the building next door and who we've never interacted with, but they've never caused a problem. So that's what that is, I think.
It's a casino stroke other type of building.
Some kind of HVAC.
There's a lot going on there, isn't there? I assume it's a chiller unit onto like a cold room for drinks.
Yeah, or they're with the triads and it's a cold room for bodies.
The triad? Oh, yeah. Like the
Chinese,
gang.
Yeah, the Chinese.
Gang affiliated.
Come here, I have a question for you.
Go on.
Would you rather...
Come here and I'll tell you a question.
Come here and I'll tell you a question. Right?
Yeah.
Would you rather fight a chicken every time you get into your car?
Yeah.
Or a goose randomly once a year? You don't know when he's going to attack you. But once he's done, that's it for the year until the 1st of January, the preceding year, the following year.
So the right answer is a chicken every time you get in the car, but...
There's no right answer.
No, like, in my opinion, the right answer is a chicken every time you get in the car. But to be honest, I'm a bit worried about my mentality about killing things, you know? And I think more bloodshed probably isn't moving me in the right direction.
The thing, I suppose, is that every time you get in a car, your own car, you have to fight a chicken, like, is kind of annoying.
I will say, though, so chicken's very scratchy and very pecky. But there's fucking weight to a goose, like.
Yeah.
A goose can do some, like, the flapping of a chicken isn't doing any harm. Like, once you get control of the neck of a chicken, it's done. It's over. But a goose can do some damage. Like, even once you're wringing the neck of a goose, it's still going, like.
The problem really is that the goose can just get you in your sleep, you know? Like, you could just wake up and...
Sorry, I didn't even think about the sleep time.
That's all you're hearing. Like, you wake up at night and you just feel this pressure in your chest and the goose just going... And he's about to fuck you up, like, you know? So, it's like Family Guy, basically, with that chicken that bursts into the room and attacks Peter every so often. Yeah, well, I suppose it's not a human-sized goose.
Yes.
It is just a regular old goose, you know?
There's a bit of, yeah. I'm definitely going for the chicken every time I get in the car.
That'd get old, I'd say, fast, you know? The only upsides is you get to keep a chicken, you know? You get to keep it freshly...
Yeah. I feel like it's obviously, it's a massive impact on your life as well. You're now the fella who can't give people a lift home because they don't want to see a chicken being murdered.
Well, the chicken won't kill other people. It's just trying to kill you, you know? So for me, I think the goose actually... I originally would have gone with the chicken, right? But I've been thinking about this one for a couple of months now. I've been saying on this now for about 5 years. I think the goose is the right answer because I think you just learn to live it. Once you kill that goose for the first years, you're going to get a bit of confidence, you know? You've squatted 200 kilos a few times, you know, suddenly it's not so scary anymore. This goose, like, as long as you're ready and you're okay with just going to sleep under duress. You know, we've seen prisoners of war, you know, Vietnam. Yeah. They have a great general wrote a book in kind of modern stoic, just going to sleep. You know, it's kind of similar to that. Like, you're just... Terrible things are happening, but eventually you just have to get on with it, you know. Whereas I feel like just one goose attack a year or 600 chicken attacks a year.
Probably more. Like, you get in your car more than twice a day.
Like, you get in your car 4 times a day, and there's a new chicken every time, you know. It's not a
also disposing of the chickens.
Well, you keep the chicken carcass. You know?
But it's still a lot of bones and feathers and skin and gizzards and
giblets. I think the upside to the chicken thing is that you've gotten... potentially 4 chickens a day, you know, and it isn't, sorry for anyone listening if you're squeamish, it's not that hard to kill a chicken, you know.
No, very easy.
But still, I think the goose is the only right answer here, unless you're not okay with those kind of spontaneous.
Well, no, I think
it's kind of like a metaphor for life there, really. Like, you don't know what's going to happen, you got to be ready.
I think as well there's a point to be made where, like, if a goose could open a door handle, it becomes a lot more dangerous, but it can't.
Well, no, the goose can get you wherever. It's a magic goose.
Can it spawn wherever it wants, like? Can it appear in your room?
Oh, yeah.
Then you're...
Oh, yeah. It can get you at 4 o'clock in the morning.
That's massive issues there.
When you're asleep. But what happens, it's random at any time of year, like, so it could show up in January and you've got that whole year, no chicken fights and no goose fights, you know? And the further the year goes on, you know, you're like, okay, I'm getting closer to chicken fights, so I just have to be a bit more, like, ready for this.
Yeah, the goose fight.
The goose fights are, yeah. You could have a machete beside your bed and it could be over in 30 seconds and back to sleep and you have a fresh goose. And goose is delicious. Like, if you render some of that goose fat, you've got some tasty roast potatoes then, you know?
I just think the possible damage a goose will do if you weigh it up against the... Yeah.
But you're increasing the chance of all those chickens getting lucky too, you know?
You are, absolutely. And, like, there's a lot of soft, fleshy areas that they can
1,200
peck at.
You get an infection, that chicken, you know?
Yeah.
So
conceivably, you could be up around 2,500-3,000 chicken kills a year.
Up to busy day, easy, yeah.
If
Every
it's a
time.
busy day.
Now, the only thing with
If
the
you're
chicken...
a postman,
yeah.
there's only one right answer. Because you're out of the car constantly.
Are you a postman?
No.
Well, okay, that's the answer. Like, the thing there as well is that if you get into other people's car, the chicken isn't there, you know? So if,
Yes.
if you get into your missus's car...
So surely the move then is to make enough money to have a driver.
Yeah. What?
But
That's probably... That's a lot of money. You don't see a lot of people with that much money, you know?
no. I feel like, I just think there's more logistically going on with the chicken, like getting rid of that many feathers, getting rid of all those carcasses. Like you're not doing a full roast chicken every time you get into the car.
Well,
You're stripping the breasts off, maybe taking the legs.
still a lot of chicken, like, I think. You know, that the upside is the amount of chicken you're getting. There's no denying that. Like, one goose a year.
Yeah.
So, I suppose, you know, it's time to start cycling, really, if you don't want those chickens, you know? That's the only... Like, I think the goose is the answer. I think you'd get used to that stress.
Is the easier answer.
I think after a few years, you're like, oh, yeah, just a goose. Sorry about that now. I just have to... It's just a goose attacking me there. He's just outside the window, and he's like this.
I might try and find a goose this weekend and fight it.
There's no...
When does geese season open? In September?
No, geese are...
I think it's September.
There's not many geese left in Ireland, to be honest.
You only need one, Garth.
I'd say I've only seen geese once in the last 20 years.
There's a load in Kerry. Near where we have the house in Kerry, there's loads of them.
Yeah.
You just need a foreshores license.
Is there any season on the swans?
No.
No.
Swans are off the table.
That's definitely some colonial thing for
It
the
is,
Brits,
yeah.
because the Queen owns them.
Yeah.
Not our fucking swans.
Why can't we eat swan? I know there's a big issue when there's a lot of immigration into Ireland maybe 20 years ago, that a lot of swans and ducks from regional parks went missing. And there kind of had to be a conversation where, like, these are not for eating.
There was the species of eagle that was introduced a couple of years ago, probably about 25 years ago, 20 odd years ago. They were introduced into Ireland, maybe not quite 20 years ago. But there was the sea eagle, I believe it was. So they were enormous. Did you ever get a chance to see one?
I've been within 10 feet of them. My uncle was the person who brought them into Ireland.
So
he headed that reintroduction program.
A lot of them are introduced very close to where I live, and they're enormous.
Huge.
So there was the rumour going around, that I don't know if this is ever true, because this was reported in the papers, that farmers were worried that the eagles would take the lambs, and they certainly looked large enough. The alleged rebuttal from the biologists was that they're scavengers and they would only eat dead lambs. And the farmers like, they'll kill them, then they'll be dead lambs, basically. Yeah. So then there was a concern that some of them were being poisoned by poison-baited lambs, and they killed quite a few of them. I don't know. Thinking about things now, it's interesting when you look back. So we were talking about this last week about what's real, what is accurate, who's representing what, you know, and not in any... We're the least conspiracy theory people ever.
Yeah.
We're the most, like, whatever. But looking back now, I don't know if that really was the case. That's what the papers were reporting.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was
There's a number of pairs of them poisoned and killed.
Were they released in pairs?
Yeah, as far as I know. So they're massive sea eagles. So like down around Kerry, South Kerry in particular, you see them picking salmon off the lake. You'll see them out in the ocean picking fish. They're unbelievable. But obviously there is a massive concern with sheep farmers. But as far as I know, that concern has been pretty much muted now. One place...
Well, most of them are gone now.
There's so the breeding pairs that are now are really successful.
Right.
One place where we shoot deer, I don't know if you've been there with me, we put out the hearts and lungs of a couple of deer, and they just come down and just
suck them.
Yeah, they love it.
That's hectic.
They're massive.
No, they are enormous.
They're proper murder raptors. Like,
you ever seen how big a barn owl is?
Yes.
Lots of barn owls near the farm at home, and they are enormous.
One of the scariest experiences ever is being in a field at night, predator calling, and you like skim the lamp every so often across the field, and you'll see like a pair of eyes that looks like a pair of fox eyes on the far side of the field, and you leave the lamp off again, and then you skim the lamp again, the eyes are closer, and then you'll skim the lamp up like 2 seconds later, and the eyes are as close as I am to you. Because it's a barn owl flying at ground level coming into the call.
Do their eyes reflect the light?
Yeah.
That's mad.
Yeah, and they're far apart as well.
Their eyes?
Yeah. At the front of their head, they're a weird looking bird.
just randomly changing tangent there. You know Ironclad, YouTube.
Yes.
Sometimes I listen to. They had one up this morning with interview from Matt Fraser, no less. How random is that?
I think I saw that thumbnail.
So I actually clicked on it because it said the one insult that changed Matt Fraser's life, And
Yes.
I have to say, it's the first interview I've listened to with Matt Fraser that he didn't come across where I thought he was a bit of a dick.
Okay.
He actually seemed a bit more chilled out, I suppose.
I like him.
Yeah, that would match up for you, I suppose. Peas in a pod and all that. But he was talking about, he used to be a really fat kid.
No way.
Yeah, so he said he was super fat around preteen, just when he was 12. He said one day he was playing at school and someone just said, "Hey, fat ass," or something, just got him with an insult. And he said he just that evening, he was like, no more. Just basically on a crash diet. Lost, like, he said 35 pounds in a month.
Okay.
So he was really
So
fat.
if you're a 10-year-old kid, that's a massive amount of weight.
He said that it just changed, that whatever that insult just got him.
Sometimes they get you.
Yeah, that really got him. He said it just tore him to bits, and he said no more fat kid.
That's mad.
And
then he was the fittest man in the world for a long
well,
time.
I always the fittest.
Yes,
The
yeah,
best,
yeah.
certainly the one of the best
As
CrossFitters.
per CrossFit.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the best CrossFitter in the world. He's a phenomenal athlete.
Yeah.
I like him. I enjoy the way he used to talk about training.
Oh, I definitely liked his ideas on training.
Because what he did was verbalize something that you see most really good athletes doing naturally. So a lot of really good athletes, super selfish, take loads of time away, sacrifice loads of other things. They never verbalize that. They're just like, if you listen to Michael Jordan talking, he's never verbalizing, "Oh, I'm the most selfish person I know, and everybody in my family works around me." Whereas Matt Fraser is like, "Yeah, I don't do anything else. I don't spend time with these people. My missus just cooks me food and looks after me because I'm winning the games every year and I make enough money."
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't see that. Whereas even if you're looking at like moderately good professional players in any sport, that's what they're like. They don't really do other things. They're pretty much cocooned away for the few years they're going to be a pro athlete. But people rarely think about it.
I think what a lot of people are held back by is not so much their genetics when it comes to training, and it's not that they need to be in a position like Matt Fraser where they're not going anywhere, they're not going out, they're going to bed at the same time every night for years on end, they're eating really cleanly for literally months in a row.
Yeah.
It's probably just the diligence and commitment, and sometimes I think it might be an ignorance thing, and I don't mean ignorance as in that they're being willfully ignorant. It's probably just a lack of knowledge on some parts of theirs. So it's not that their genetics are the thing stopping them from progressing, if we're talking about weightlifters, but if we're looking at people in judo or jiu-jitsu or any big amateur sport. So if you look at like someone like Matt Fraser, like he did everything down to a T as much as possible. But I think where you see a lot of problems, I see a lot with weightlifters because the progress is really tangible. So you'll see people do jiu-jitsu for years on end and judo for years on end, or running or endurance races or hybrid athletes or whatever it is they're doing. They'll do it for a very long time, but you don't see as many people get disheartened with those as you do with weightlifting, because a lot of times with weightlifters, it's just really objective, the numbers going up or not. And I think probably the biggest thing that catches people, and we're going to do a longer video on this, is just their inability to commit to it. And I don't mean that they need to leave their job in KPMG in London city centre and move to Bulgaria and live with Carlos Nazar. But it's just the kind of idea that, like, oh, the lads are going rock climbing and I went with them.
Yeah.
Or, I did just want to jump in with the, I don't know, there was an after soccer
Saturday morning CrossFit class.
Saturday morning CrossFit class, or just any number of things, and they add up over time, and they're like a reflection of the other stuff. Not going to bed on time, or if you set up with a new one-to-one, a question I always ask, like, how's your sleep? And every single time, only one person ever, and actually he's ironically the best, probably the strongest person I've ever coached, or likely will ever coach, considering how much of a freak he is. But he was the only person who was like an average of 8.5 every night. Knew it straight away. Yeah. The casual answer is, could be better. Like maybe 6 hours or so. And I'm like, it's crazy, because if you take sleep as one of them, like they'll be getting up maybe at 7, half 7 at latest maybe, and then you're working a full day and you're commuting to work and you might be getting public transport, and then you're expected to come home and train and maybe weightlifting for like 2 hours, maybe 5 times a week, 4 times a week. And what are you doing? Like, I just cannot comprehend it. It makes no sense to me. I just cannot. I'm like, and then the problem then is people are really upset with their results.
That's the issue, yeah.
And they're like, oh, it's not like they were like, you know what, I was on the lash last weekend and this week's training is shit, but I really enjoyed going to the fucking market and sculling 10 pints at 12 o'clock in the day. Do you know if they're like, I would just, people would be better off if they just were like, yeah, you know what, I'm not super committed to weightlifting,
100%,
but I really enjoy it. I'm not super committed to jiu-jitsu, but I really enjoy it. I would just love if people could, I'm not saying people need to be super committed, but if you're expecting certain results from yourselves and from your training, and then you're half-assing it, you're just really fucking yourself over. And you're fucking yourself over not only physically because your progress isn't happening, but the mental anguish people go through, where I'm like, what are you doing?
But from the mental side of things, for a lot of people there, whether it's weightlifting or powerlifting or whatever, that's one of the most enjoyable things they have. Obviously, they're like friends and family, and if they have kids or whatever, but the sport they're currently taking part in is a major source of enjoyment.
Yeah.
And then they'll have this massive downer because it's not going well, or they'll do a 12-week block and it doesn't go well. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, fuck, it's whatever I was doing in powerlifting or weightlifting wasn't the right thing to be doing, or I need to change this and that. Mm-hmm. Yet, like, as you say, they'll have been on the lash 2 out of the last 3 weekends, not gone to bed on time 4 times in a row, and then they think that it's what they're doing in the gym is the issue.
Yeah.
What they're doing in the gym is a tiny aspect of it, you know, which is another reason where people just, generally speaking, in my opinion, if you're a recreational athlete, you should be finding other things to do that you enjoy as well. It doesn't have to be, like, it'd be great if you are a weightlifter and you like doing some rock climbing once a week or once a month. That's great. It's really, really good. Or maybe you like going hiking, but it doesn't even have to be that. Just having some degree of variance in your hobbies is good.
I don't even mind the variance. I don't even think you necessarily need the variance, but you just do need to understand how much you're actually committed. The problem with weightlifting is, if you take weightlifting in particular, is it's not very fun if you're not very good at weightlifting. Casual weightlifting, it's not like you were, for example, we were just watching Clarence. He had a video up on his Patreon. We were just listening to it, and he was doing some outrageous dyno, and he's doing a lot of rock climbing now. And for Clarence to go in and do like 150 per kilo power cleans after not doing any power cleans for a month is really fun for him, because he knows he can do more if he needs to. He knows he's done more when he's done it. So now he's just like, yeah, this is kind of fun. Or I'm maintaining my squat at like 270, and until I broke my foot, it was very, very easy. And it's really fun squatting like that. The problem is if you're kind of stuck on an 85 kilo snatch for the last 3 years, it's not very fun, and it can be really frustrating. It can be fun if you're good at reframing things, but if you're a blue belt for 4 years, it's still fun because jiu-jitsu is fun like that, or judo can be still fun like that because there's really finessing things. But it's undeniable to yourself, if you come in, you still can't snatch more than 85. It sucks really hard. And it sucks more, I suppose, if you've been really committed and you haven't been progressing, but it also sucks if you haven't been committed and you haven't been honest with yourself and you haven't been like, you know what, I've been fucking around a bit too much.
Yeah. I actually think one of the other arguments for variance is like plowing your head harder into that isn't always the option, you know. So you'll see people who are like massively overtraining, or they love training, but they're training so much that their training sessions aren't really good quality training sessions, but they still have to go to the gym because they have to be there 6 times a week or whatever. It'd be much better in that case to go to the driving range on a Tuesday and Thursday instead of going to the gym and making it a 7-session week instead of a 5-session week, or a 6 instead of a 4, and just giving your body a chance to actually adapt and get better. There's also a lot of people who train really, really hard and train a lot who are in terrible shape.
But it's unbelievable how hard you can train in the wrong direction. It's actually,
oh my God,
and I've done it. I know you've done it.
By God, have I what?
I know we've seen so many people over the last number of nearly decade and a half in different aspects. It's incredible how much time you can spend if you just take weightlifting even, or strength sports, or squatting, if you even go more specific, how much time you can spend in the gym and people not get better. It's incredible. So it's so funny. It's like when you do the right programming, it takes care of itself. when you're doing the wrong programming, oh my God, I think of people I know. I think of situations I was in when I was coaching myself and I wasn't as knowledgeable. And I suppose in my case, it was lucky because we ended up in a position where you learned a lot from it. And I knew I wasn't knowing enough. I knew I didn't know enough, you know.
It's the cost of institutional knowledge.
The knowing wasn't there. And that's why we went to places like Qatar, we went to places like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Germany, Romania, any number of other places. I knew I didn't know it enough and we couldn't get it in fast enough. But there was times where I knew and I was like, fuck. It's like, this isn't happening. Like, the wheels are spinning, and I knew it wasn't, but I knew it got there. And now what I know now, and obviously if you could go back and be like, if I could tell Garth 10 years ago, whatever, just start railing Snazolol, you know?
That's all I needed.
That's all we learned, really, I suppose. No, I'm joking. But you can feel this, like, block, and you're like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. It's not that it upsets me, because upsetting is the wrong word. But I'm a little bit disappointed in the world when we'll go back to somewhere. Maybe we've done a seminar there before. We'll go back a year later. Or you'll see somebody's Instagram story a year later. And they're snatching and clean and jerking similar weights to the last time we were talking to them. Mm-hmm. And like, when you're going down the right road, and whether that's the right coach, the right technical model, the right program, the combination of all those, you're committing to training well. When you're going down that road, success is inevitable. Success will come, you know for a fact it will come. Everybody will get better. The road is well known, but so many people are on the wrong road.
Yeah.
It's scary. Like, as there's no need to put a number on it, but the amount of people stuck at a snatch, and there's one or two numbers that people just get stuck on, they'll be stuck there for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And that issue could be gone in 3 months, which is it's a crazy position that so many people are in.
I used to be more committed, I suppose. Not committed, no, that's the wrong word. I used to get caught up easier in trying to help some people, not even people I was coaching, just people who just weren't getting better, and just random, because they'd ask you a question, you know.
Yeah. And
I would have made the mistake before thinking, oh, they're actually going to listen to what I'm going to say now. Now I'm like, okay, I'll tell you what I think, but I'm just kind of like, okay. And it doesn't matter what sport we encounter, anything in the club or if we're in jiu-jitsu and someone says something, I'll just be like, yeah, that's okay. This is what I think, or I'll just half-ass an answer, because it's not that I don't want to help them, but you know, in most cases, unless someone is actually paying you, or if it's someone on the app, they're just not really going to listen. They're not really going to put in the time, and it's unfortunate. And I don't feel any ill will towards them. I totally understand. I'm sure I do stuff like that. I'm sure I ask you stuff about shooting or something, and you know full well that I'm not going to do any target shooting. You know, I understand that, so I don't feel like people are idiots or anything like that. I'm just like, okay, I just kind of get it. So, and I don't want to waste any of my mental energy. Like, people will pay €300 for an hour's consultation, you know. People pay €400 for a month of coaching. They deserve that kind of mental commitment from me, I suppose. And it's not that I would love to help people, and I'm always there if they have a question, but it's kind of like, hey, and I don't know what is the block there, you know. Like, they'll ask the questions, and I think some people just want to talk about stuff. So just kind of any random situation you can think of here, any gym situation, any training situation.
I find it a lot on like nights out or at weddings or whatever.
That's a good
someone will be like, Dara's S&C thing there, talk about that, you know. And now I'll just not talk about it. And I'll say, yeah, whatever, just message me tomorrow.
Yeah.
Send me a WhatsApp, you have my number, or message me on Instagram. But we're not talking about it now. I'll just point blank refuse it. I've spent probably more than 100 hours of my life talking about somebody's fucking shoulder. Or the fact that their kid needs to be bigger and stronger. And it's just an utter waste of time. It's not like they need to figure it out. They need to do it. But they're not going to do it when you're having roast beef sitting across from them, you know.
Oh yeah,
I think the setting is wrong.
You think the situation isn't correct for that.
Yeah.
But even if it happens in gyms and training and stuff, you know, or it happens at seminars. The thing at seminars is really funny. Like, we've done, I suppose, 40 or 50 seminars now over the last number of years, something like that. And we'll be at the end, we'll be doing the programming talk, and it might be an S&C seminar, it might be a weightlifting seminar, and we'll be like, any questions, I don't come up to us after and whisper a question to us. Like, ask us now, because everyone knows, like, and inevitably someone will whisper a question after, and they're like, this is, I don't know, give me an example there so I'm not targeting anyone, just in case they think they're
every time I try to do a back squat cycle, my knees get sore.
Yeah, and they're like, okay, probably need to look at loading, mobility, or whatever, and you'll give them the answer, and you just know it's not going to happen. No. And I wish you could just ray gun the answer into their head.
The problem isn't lack of information, because you provide the information.
Yeah.
I don't know what the problem is, which leads me to believe that the solution is not, like, a load of issues. So a load of issues, if you're running a business or you're listening to this and you run a business, load of issues are like, we don't know the answer. We don't know the answer that makes ad A better than ad B or service C better than service D. We just don't know. We're trying to figure it out. I wish somebody could come along and, like, the Alex Momosi or Hermosi or whatever would come along and say X, Y, and Z. This is exactly what you need. Do this. I wish there was the RTA back squat program for business.
There must be out there, though. I assume there has to be.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what those people are asking for. I think a lot of the time people just want an empathetic ear from a perceived person of authority in the area to be like, yeah, what you're doing is right. It's very hard. It's a really difficult situation.
Yeah, I suppose maybe more confirmation is hoped for there.
Yeah, I just think a lot of the seminar things are so funny because it's got to the point now where you say that at seminars. I'll be finishing up a lecture and you'll be like, Dara's going to ask you if you've any questions. Don't come up to me afterwards. This is the time for questions. And even it happened in Switzerland a few weeks ago. I was like, okay, is that the last of the questions? And then you said the thing of like, okay, ask your questions now. Don't ask us afterwards.
Yeah.
And people were standing up to go, and then 3 more questions happened again.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that is. Like, when I go to things like that, and I went to a load of things like that when I was in my earlier 20s, learning as much as I possibly could, I was the most annoying person in that room.
Yeah. What?
John, what? Will you go back to slide 3, please? Yeah. What's that line? Like, everything. Just the most, and obviously that's annoying too for some people. But
and like, we've put up a few lectures now from seminars recently, and you can see people ask questions in the middle, and I don't mind at all. Like, people ask questions every 10 minutes or something, and it's totally fine. It's just I'm not even giving out about people coming up after. It's just more of a symptom of an interesting problem in training.
Yeah.
And it's like, you might have the same people who will ask questions, but then they'll come up and ask the real question after, and this is the one they want. I suppose from a logistic point of view as well, or just an etiquette point of view, like, we're finished our day's work, and we've said we're done now. If you want to think about it that way, just in case anyone thinks we're being rude. Like, if you're closing your sandwich shop at 5 to 5 and someone comes in and is like, can I have 40 sandwiches, and there's 3 other people behind them who also knew you were closing. That's the equivalent of that, you know.
But my other view with that sort of stuff is, like, in a Q&A environment, the value comes from the Q as well as from the A. So, like, if there's 5 people in the room, 2 of those people withhold questions, the value of that questions and seminar or questions and answer seminar has gone down by 40%, because now we don't get those extra 2 questions. I'll give you the answer to that question in person afterwards, but you've taken that value away from everyone else as well, you know.
It's also important to understand that nobody else cares what you're asking. Most people just care about their own question or the lecture in general or whatever it is. Yeah. And that goes for every scenario. Like, if you think other people care, you're in a very juvenile environment. Yes. And they're the problem. You're not the problem for asking the question. If someone else thinks you're asking an annoying question, you need to... if you think someone else...
It's a you problem.
Yeah, it's a you problem. If you think someone else asking a question in a group environment is something that's silly or annoying, then, you know, you're probably at the issue there, not the person.
Speaking of you problems, I've decided that I'm coming up with a solution to one of my problems.
What's one of your problems?
My back being sore all the time, so I'm making reverse hyper.
Do you reckon maybe stretch your hips, doing some soft tissue work in your glutes and your back might be better?
Speaking of a you problem as well, and stretching my hips and lower back, the lack of hip extension I have is, I would say, criminal.
So maybe just hopping off the back of the horse we were just on there, talking about people doing things when they should be doing something else.
But this is also about, like, loving welding and making things.
Do you think maybe not making reverse hyper is the answer here, and getting a little soft tissue ball into your glutes, stretching possibly your hamstrings and your hip flexors, rolling your back a little bit, and getting a back that's more mobile than, for example, a surfboard might be the key to not having back pain when you're running and squatting.
Yeah. Who knows?
You couldn't say. We just couldn't fathom it, you know.
Just couldn't know. Nobody knows the answer to this question.
Yeah.
My hips, like my knee barely comes underneath. It doesn't come underneath my hip.
Yeah.
Like if I'm standing here now, my knee does not come back to the line of my hip.
Does that feel tight?
That's excruciatingly tight, yeah.
Yeah, I just wonder why.
And then you see the lads running at 1500 in the Olympics, and their fucking knee is pointed back to back like last week.
Mm-hmm.
Just these massive strides, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows? Tune in next week for a reverse hyper build.
You're actually going to build a reverse hyper?
Yeah, I have it in my head, kind of made. So yeah.
Do you have time to make a reverse hyper?
Well, you see, I need to put in an order for steel next week.
Right.
So I need to think about a reverse hyper because I want to order the steel for the reverse hyper.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of sneak it into the house steel order build.
Okay.
So I needed to think about that, and I want to make a little. There's a few bits of gym gear I want to make. I want to make a little dip and pull up station.
Do you know, I was just thinking about that yesterday. I need somewhere to do dips.
Yeah.
It's actually, you'd think it wouldn't be that hard to facilitate doing dips somewhere with gym equipment. But it's actually kind of, if you're in a bare bones home gym.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Getting somewhere to do dips is actually kind of not the easiest thing.
Unless you're doing those like Korean dips on a bench, but nobody has the shoulder mobility for that.
But they're not worth shit, to be honest.
No.
I'd argue weighted dips are a better upper body builder than benching nearly. For more areas.
I don't know.
For upper body.
That's spoken like a man who hates bench pressing.
I don't know. Like it's.
You do hate the bench press.
I do hate bench pressing, yeah. But I feel like dips are so useful. Like
dips are great.
Yeah.
I also feel like that range of motion on a dip, you just don't get anywhere near it on a bench.
Well, that's the problem. If you're doing dips like they do them in street lifting, you know, where they're like sitting, they're like they're not sitting back, they're leaning forward.
They just hinge forward.
Yeah, but if you're doing dips where you're actually just trying to get a full range of motion dip, you're getting a lot of range of motion there, and if you weight them up.
If I'm being honest, the only reason I want the dip station is to do dips and imagine myself like Liu Zhaozhen's back, doing like 100 kilo dips.
But the dips won't do that for your back, I suppose.
No, but I'm just thinking about that whole aesthetic, you know.
Yeah. That would require regular bodybuilding training. Would you?
Yeah.
How do you think of that?
And steroids.
What do you think of that?
Both of those things scare me.
Oh.
One more than the other.
What kind of is going to be like those stereotypical dip and pull stations you see for sale?
No.
Are you going to put it onto the reverse hyper?
Yes.
Oh.
So, because the reverse hyper, a lot of reverse hypers have like a cross leg and they hinge in the middle. But I don't want one of those. I want a really solid reverse hyper that you could park a mountain bike on top of.
Right.
Motorbike on top of. So I'm just going to build a square, like the top of this table, but obviously a square and higher. And then off the side of it, I'm just going to continue two of the uprights up. And then at the front, just have two handles coming out. So those handles I can also reach through and grab them when I'm reverse hypering. Yeah. So
Okay.
that's my thought. A very simple construction. 4 legs on the ground, joined like 2 or 1 to 1, 1 to 1, and a gap in the middle for my swinging arm of the reverse hyper.
Have you used a reverse hyper regularly before?
I've used a reverse hyper less than 10 times. And then I'm going to do pillow bearings for the swinging arm.
Okay.
So I think all of that will be a lovely little unit.
That might actually be nice, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, it's not going to be ungainly either because it's not going to be massive. They don't have to be really big, you know. So I'm looking forward to some loaded eccentric back work.
Yeah. Just reefing on it.
Just swinging on it. It's all about that ballistic plyometric effect, you know. That's what it is, isn't it? In your back.
Did you come up with that term?
No, I didn't.
Who came up with that term?
I don't think we should speak ill of people who aren't here anymore.
Well, Louis Simmons. I think, I always maintained that Louis Simmons would have been great. Not really as a powerlifting coach, but as an S&C coach for athletes. It's probably better off for a large part of his training. I think a lot of his stuff was probably better off.
Do you know what? I think a lot of what Louis Simmons said wasn't that wrong. It's just in certain areas he shouldn't have poked his head in there. Like the power cleans with bands and stuff was weird.
Oh yeah, forget about it.
If you forget about that stuff, he got a lot of stuff very right.
Like use of bell squats.
Yeah.
Like if you do those marches on a belt squat, like you're getting a pump in your ass, you know, like you're getting a good pump. He liked.
You got in trouble for that before, did you? Pumping your ass.
He like all those just strength training for athletes.
Yeah.
Like,
Good. Big into GPP phases.
but the
Pushing a sled.
ballistic stuff for high force strength athletes was completely pointless. Like,
Yeah.
they were just lighter days.
Yeah.
No matter what you want to say about it, like they didn't really make you more explosive. Like the recruitment only happens.
Daily undulating conjugation is not to be sniffed at, Owen.
The high threshold recruitment only happens at higher weights, and you can't do that voluntarily. Like
Yeah.
you have to be under duress
Yeah.
for 90% plus. Like, so you see the recruitment is pretty similar between 90 and 100%, but benching 50% really fast doesn't recruit more fast twitch fibers. So it might make you faster at benching 50% faster for sure, and maybe with the bands it might be interesting. And you know, maybe if you're a wrestler and you're doing heavy band resisted benching, it might actually be useful, for example, in upper body strength. But if you're trying to bench more and you're not in a shirt, it's just not really. It's just a light day. It's just high. But it's not even high volume. You used to do like 10 sets of 2.
Yeah. I think the lighter, though, they call them speed days.
Yeah, wasn't it ballistic or speed days?
Yeah. I think if you're a football player or a rugby player, and obviously you're like trying to fend people off aggressively, or you're trying to drive into somebody aggressively, you're probably not practicing that all too much. Like, you'd rarely think about how fucking aggressively you lock your elbow out as you fend someone or hand them off into the chest.
Yeah.
And getting someone like that into the gym, really focusing on the aggression on those power movements, is probably a really good thing in terms of muscular recruitment, skill acquisition in those particular skill areas. But as you said, it's not for the big boys.
Do you remember the Westside had a certificate for CrossFit for a while?
Yes.
So
yeah.
I remember the gym I was at, well over a decade now, a CrossFit gym I was training in, got a certificate, and they were doing cleans with bands, very light bands. Like they'd set them up using the rig, and I came in one day and I was like, oh, the coach was like, do you want to try them? And I was like, no. I'm okay, thank you.
No.
That's not for me.
No.
It pops up every few years.
Yeah.
I'd see an Instagram account every few months. Say like every 6-month interval, you'll randomly see someone being like, but have weightlifters tried band resisted cleans? They're like, everyone's like, no, that's actually just a stupid idea.
Yeah.
They're like, how do you know if you haven't tried them? And you're like, you can beat me with a stick and I know it's a bad idea while I'm doing my cleans. Like, we don't need to do this. Like, you can.
I did see somebody making an argument. This is probably 2 or 3 years ago now, where they were like, this allows me to practice what 180 kilos is going to feel like. Mm-hmm. And you're like, the first rule that you're going to learn in physics is that 180 kilos falls at the same rate 80 kilo falls at. You don't need to be aggressively accelerating the bar weight downward. Gravity is constant.
Yeah, there's no benefits to doing, certainly not full lifts.
No.
Maybe I could see someone make a really speculative argument that pulls maybe with bands.
I could see that, yeah.
I still think it'd be a bad idea, but it probably wouldn't be as a bad idea as a full lift. I could see if you could throw that at someone, I could be like, right, I bet that won't play out very well in reality.
Yes.
But equally, I don't think it'll be too detrimental if you're a decent lifter.
But then, yeah, I think if you're just an athlete, pulls with bands, grand. Not going to make you any worse.
Even a deadlift with bands, I wouldn't even mean pulls.
Yeah.
Like just a deadlift.
Oh, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, just a clean deadlift.
RDLs with bands.
Yeah.
Any of those. Anything where you're just increasing that resistance up near the top of it, I think is probably no bad thing. The problem is if you're practicing the skill of moving a barbell around.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be molesting how the barbell moves.
Listen, snatching, clean and jerking is hard enough as it is. But make it fucking worse for yourself. That's like another thing. You know, when you're spinning your wheels.
Yes.
It's not gonna do it. Like,
I feel like a lot of time when people are spinning their wheels, they look for more variance as well.
You know what?
And that's the last thing you should do.
Ballistic benching and band resisted squatting might actually be more useful for weightlifters than it would be for the strength athletes. It might have some applicability there.
Yes.
Squatting into bands. Now,
because the fact that they're more like an athlete. But they're obviously still not an athlete, but like they're more like an athlete.
But weightlifters don't even need that because they're snatching, clean and jerking so much. They're doing so much speed strength stuff anyway. It would be pointless. So I think Louis got some things right, to be sure. And he wasn't,
definitely.
You know, he wasn't as bad as he was often lauded to be, or, you know, people kind of hate him a bit. I think he was just pretty confident. What I want to know, and if anyone has this, I'm sure someone watching will have these numbers, is, so do you remember in Westside for Life, is it that YouTube documentary, or was it Westside for Life?
I think it was something like that anyway.
So they were saying that Louis was only ever an equipped powerlifter, and to be honest, that's what I would have thought.
Okay.
But apparently he had a lot of good raw lifters. But I don't know any of them. I haven't heard any of them. We do pay attention currently, but obviously he's passed away. So maybe a few years ago. So did he ever produce a consistent number of good raw lifters, I suppose, at the level that he was?
Yeah, I'd be interested to know.
I don't know. In the documentary, they seem to have named a few, but it's hazy now. And the documentary came out like 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So
I wonder how much of that is a factor of where powerlifting was when he was in his peak versus how well his methods worked for raw versus equipped powerlifting. Because raw powerlifting is only newly coming into vogue.
Yeah.
Like powerlifting, the powerlifters were lifting in suits and shirts up until 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like that's what big powerlifters were. If you were a big powerlifter, strong dude, squatting 1,000 pounds.
In 2006.
Yeah.
10 years ago.
You were doing that with a suit on. Yeah. And if you were benching massive weights, you were doing it with a shirt on. This thing of like raw or raw with wraps or whatever, that's a relatively new thing.
Garrett's actually, on one of his videos, he had a good point. He was like, why, if you're not competing in powerlifting, why would you obey the standards of powerlifting? It's like, why would you
squat to death?
Squat, just do high bar squats, bench a normal grip, deadlift normally, not sumo deadlifting or whatever. It was an interesting point. But I wonder if Louis came around now and he was coaching the raw lifters, what would you see? Also, you don't see many famous powerlifting coaches anymore, a lot of figureheads. The only person springing to mind really is Australian strength coach in some ways.
Yes.
I don't really see, but I suppose is it more influencers now rather than...
I was just thinking there, it's kind of gone to athlete influencers more than...
online personalities.
Yeah.
I suppose we'd be lumped into that as well, wouldn't we? Like...
It's depressing enough, isn't it?
Nah, it's a pretty good job, I think. It's a pretty good gig.
It's a great job.
Yeah.
It's a great gig.
It's a good gig if you can get it.
I wonder how much of that is to do with so many athletes selling training programs as well.
Very possibly, yeah.
I think as well because powerlifting, and this is by no means a slight on the sport, powerlifting isn't very technical. Like in terms of getting a coach and stuff like that, like learning to weightlift on your own is virtually impossible unless you're a Clarence or someone like that.
But he didn't even learn his own.
Yeah, like it's virtually impossible to do well without a coach, somebody reviewing your lift, somebody giving you corrections. You can get a long way in strength training with your own squatting, benching, and pressing. Like we've got people coming to us, they run basic strength training. They might do an off-season block and they'll go on to the powerlifting blocks and they'll get to very good numbers with pretty much minimal input. Like they'll submit videos for review, but it's not the same thing as how the fuck am I going to put this barbell over my head?
Yeah.
Like like the barrier for entry into powerlifting is just so much lower than it is for weightlifting. And I wonder, is that why you don't see that many famous powerlifting coaches?
Yeah, I suppose maybe they're out there, we're just not really noticing them.
Yeah.
I remember the interesting thing about Clarence was that I saw that point where for a while people were like, oh, Clarence is self-coached, and was like, no, well, actually he did get a coach. He's talked about it a lot as well. But I remember that I was training with him when he didn't have the coach, and then the change in his lifting, how quickly that happened, his technique, like he just started moving his feet, things like that, and how fast the programming changed. Was if you look at, we were talking about there at the start of the podcast, like spinning your wheels, it's unbelievable how slow you can be going. And like he really sped up his trajectory, or his speed he was going in, actually I should say, once he got used to that. Even very basic, the Polish / Bulgarian style programming that he was given. Yes. Like it was just like kind of volume, going heavier, just pretty normal ways to program as well, like I could say, like, and the changes he made then were really quickly, you know. So.
And that's kind of the base that he built his weightlifting on. Like that's really where that big progress came from.
Yeah.
It certainly hadn't been built before that.
Then his knees exploded, so.
Yes.
You know, potato. Yeah. You give some, you get some.
It's just the way weightlifting is, really, isn't it?
Give it or take it away.
Just actually hurting yourself.
Do you know what I keep saying, Reed? It's we've been working on an Evalgus video for a while, and I just keep coming back to the script. But the thing I keep seeing, and I definitely feel way less emotionally aroused and angered by things like this anymore. So when you see someone, or people will say stuff
to us. Were you aroused by Evalgus previously?
Well, you never know. Carlos's knees are pretty hot. So if you want someone to be like, it's your take on training be stupid, like they'd leave a comment.
Yeah.
Now I'm just like, okay, it's just that's how we think in training. That's cool. They've got other things to do, like if I have to coach athletes and stuff like that, it's fine if you don't agree with us. No bother, no problem whatsoever. I'd almost say I don't have time to be like, I don't care. Like if you think that's how you think, that's cool. And it's not that I don't listen to good people talking about training, but
I will say a lot of the time a comment like that will pop up where it's our view on something, and a comment will pop up and the tone is almost like you guys have no idea what you're talking about, because my coach or my people I like listening to like doing whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
None of our opinions that we'll make a statement about are quick opinions. These are things that have been mulled over and talked about and tested with lifters and tested in programs and constantly thought about for years upon years upon years. Like 25 years accumulatively been thinking about barbell positioning in the back squat or best form of progression in a program. Like these things aren't...
It's probably 30 years now.
Yeah, like these are things that haven't... None of these views have come in a kind of split thing. It's not like I saw a Westside video and I like doing this. Or I saw this powerlifter training with whatever system and this system is what I like doing now because I like that powerlifter. At this point, in my own head, I don't have any of those views. Every view I have is because of my own... Or every view that I'll make a statement on is because of our own accumulated experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's lost on some people where they think that level of insight is equal, you know? But that level of insight isn't equal.
Yeah.
You've come up with an idea because you listened to somebody talk about it in a video and you feel like that's how you think now, versus decades of accumulated build-up of, no, this is definitely how you should progress in the squat.
Or it's like it's your point where you've seen your 2000 weightlifter snatch and you're like, do you know what? I keep seeing this over the last 15 years. Like, I think this might be a thing, you know?
Yeah.
But the thing in the, you know, actually, just on that subject, Kelly Starrett, when we had the podcast.
That's what I was thinking about Kelly there.
It really hit me during that podcast where he was just fucking sick of people online harassing him about stuff. And the physio thing really took off like 2 or 3 years ago, and obviously at a peak, and Kelly got a lot of flack for stuff. But I feel like he was fortunately in a part in his career where it didn't fucking matter anymore.
Yeah.
But it really interests me because I was like, oh, you're kind of jaded by just all the abuse you were getting sometimes.
Yeah.
For someone who, without a doubt, is one of the innovators for a lot of the reason a lot of people do stuff now, you know? Like, we were there before he was there, and then when he was there, and the change and stuff, and the amount of mobility accounts now and stuff you see doing things, you're like, that was Kelly. Kelly.
And it's not even like your career started because of Kelly Starrett. The person who kicked off your career decided to get into this room because of Kelly Starrett doing it.
Yeah.
Kelly Starrett's the person who, when you're trying to meet him at the Olympics, is too busy because he's with Team USA water polo, and then he's going for dinner with George St. Pierre, so he's pretty busy and we're pretty busy.
Yeah.
Like, that's the level of person you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And you're commenting on his video thinking his views on knee movement are incorrect, you know?
But what I keep seeing with the knee valgus thing, and I've seen it, I'm really not picking anyone out now here.
Yeah.
Because I think like the knee valgus thing probably isn't as bad as maybe people originally thought it would be, but it's not as straightforward as I'm seeing a lot. But what I'll see is they'll always use elite weightlifters, right? And it's funny because like you should be using elite athletes is something we talk about a lot, and there's definitely some good things. You have to be nuanced with what you know works well for a lot of people, what you can take for elite weightlifters or whatever, or any elite athletes. But they'll take a couple of elite weightlifters and they'll be like, and their knees are fine, and sometimes I'll know some of those elite weightlifters personally, and I'll be like, I know for a fact he has knee pain or she has knee pain. I know. And it's not that they're making inferences saying that knee valgus doesn't correlate with pain. But I'm also saying, if you're picking these people, you're picking the wrong people, because I know they have a knee pain. I know their knees are really sore. So I could equally say knee valgus gives you knee pain because they have sore knees, you know. It's really interesting because I'll just see them do it. I very rarely would comment anything like that on Instagram, if ever, actually, never do it.
Yeah.
But there is times where I'm like, oh, I actually know Miso, and I know he's had knee pain for the last like 3 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I don't want to get and do that. I want to get involved.
Yeah.
But I think it's funny because I keep seeing it. It's like I've seen it 4 or 5 times this year.
I think if it was if you were in a room with 10 people who you viewed as compatriots, and one of them was making that point, you'd then bring it up.
Yeah.
But on the internet, there's no, like, you're screaming into a field of thistles, like.
Yeah, what's the point?
Yeah.
Like, we'll make our content, they can make your content.
Yeah.
I don't really mind, and I get where people are coming from with knee valgus in particular, for just talk about that topic. You're like, it probably isn't as dangerous, because if my knees move in a little bit, you know.
Yes, yeah.
But then I have another thing, and I don't know if maybe it's a little bit douchey, but I can keep seeing for people who don't squat very much.
Yeah.
Or haven't coached anyone who squats very much, especially high bar, low bar, anything like that. And I'm always like, I don't know, are you just picking up on a topic that's easy to do? Or is that what you really think? Or maybe you're talking about it, maybe what's going on is you're talking about in a topic relevant to the people who you coach, which is you might coach 1,000 people who will only ever squat 170 or something. So maybe then it doesn't matter. You know, it's that's why I try and be like, you know what, I don't need to get involved. It doesn't make a fucking difference, and I don't need to signal anyone out here. You know, it doesn't. Because ultimately, the answer we always come back to is we'll coach people the way we'll coach them. Yeah, we'll put out the content the way we think is, and then whatever people want to do. And if you like us, and we'll coach you that way. And that's it. It doesn't matter. Like,
no, it really doesn't. Like, we've stopped coaching people previously because people wanted to do different things, and that's, to be honest, that's the best outcome from my point of view. If someone wants to train more or go harder, and it's not, or whatever it is, or whatever the decision they're making is, I'm so much happier at that point to wash my hands of it and say, okay, that's great. We're not going to do that. We don't think you should do an extra 9 or a 9th and 10th month of a training cycle. That's probably the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And that is, it takes a while to come around to that point of view, because at the start you're just like, why everybody's doing the wrong thing, and I really wish people would make the right decision.
Yes.
But it takes a bit of time to come around to thinking like that.
Or what'll happen, I'll be really chuffed for some of our athletes where they'll just be like, do you know what, weightlifting's not for me, if we just pick weightlifting.
Yes.
Or they'll be like, do you know what, jiu-jitsu's not for me, or judo. And I'm really chuffed for them, because it's a hard decision to make, you know.
Yeah.
And if you go back to Clarence again, he hasn't given up weightlifting, he's just taken a big pause. And I know there was a lot of kind of anguish around his decision to do that, and he's talked about that again, so I'm not making anything public here that he didn't want made public. He's talked about the fact that he was like, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do with weightlifting, or what do I keep going, or like, do I want to train for 5 more kilos on my snatch? Yeah, he's doing rock climbing now, and he's fucking loving it, and
he's fucking class at it.
He's outrageous. They were watching a Dynamo, I think they're called. He said no one else in the gym has ever done it, or couldn't.
I don't think anybody in the world can do it. Did you see the size of that jump?
I think he teleported.
For reference, Clarence has like 2 feet and 2 separate leg holes or foot holes or whatever, and he has 2 hands like paired on the same hand hold at like belly button height. Yeah. And he kind of drops down into a squat and fucking yeets himself up
6 feet
and just grabs hold of one hand.
Yeah, one hand. You know when
it's absurd.
Do you know when, as well, when we say things like that, I don't want to make it sound like, oh, I don't care about learning anymore, I don't care about educating myself, or I'm somehow jaded about putting content on the internet. Certainly none of those whatsoever. We don't. Yeah. Well, we make fucking 28 reels a week, 7 YouTube videos. Definitely not jaded whatsoever. Yeah. As motivated as ever, if not more motivated. But I kind of just care less if someone doesn't like it or doesn't agree with it, or I suppose I kind of even detach if it does well or not, because, you know, we were talking about this a few weeks ago as well, that if you put up a video and it gets 1,000 views, I'm not really bothered if it doesn't do as well as if we done a click your video, because if 1,000 people watch that and there's 10 comments for people like, this was amazing, you know, it's nice. One
thing on the point of view thing, so like, I've changed my mind on a few things over the last few years. Yeah. But now I'll even see, like, in my route for changing my mind is much more well known at this point. Yeah. So like, before, it literally was a shit fight of sledgehammer versus a sledgehammer bashing against each other in my brain. No, I think this, no, I think that. No matter what the evidence was on both sides, it would always be the shit fight, and then eventually I'd just have to choose in one way or another. Whereas now I feel like if I have a number of occurrences where the contrary is deemed to be true, and then I see people moving in a general direction, I'll just read a small bit more into it, and then I slowly, not so much immediately, migrate over to another way of thinking. But what I'll do is I'll slowly just leave go of the initial idea and start to move to like a more moderate stance.
Well, I think what probably you should call it is updating your ideas rather than changing.
Exactly.
So changing makes it seem like you thought that weighted sprints was really bad for sprinting.
Yeah.
Now it's like weighted sprints are probably useful at certain stages for sprinting. Like
Yeah.
you're going from version 1 to version 1.2. You're just like, oh yeah, do you know what? Maybe in this case, like you're refining them, because realistically at this stage, there's nothing that's going to come along where someone's going to tell me something about weightlifting technique or strength programming or getting an athlete stronger for a sport, where I'm going to be like, maybe sport specific gym movements are the right way. Whereas someone might be like, I've actually found that broad jumps were way better for my long jumpers rather than box jumps or something.
Yes.
And I'd be like, oh, you've coached 4 Olympic medalists. That's interesting. I'll have a think about that.
Like the example that comes to mind for me is a few weeks ago, back in my old gym. We opened that in 2016. And so Sarah, a lot of you who would have emailed Sika Strength over the last couple of years might have dealt with Sarah or spoken with Sarah over emails. Sarah is a really, really good, talented young weightlifter. And we used to cue a lot, or we'd work a lot at the contact point at the hip and really focusing on athletes making contact. And then there's a group of like 20 members. We're going through that, and Sarah was in the actual workshop itself. And she was talking about that contact point because the person she was paired up with wasn't making contact. And I was like, Saz, to be honest, at this point, I'm not focused on contact. We did so much work for years. That was a major aspect of where I thought people should put a lot of cognitive energy in terms of their snatch technique or the starting of their extension. It's like now, over the last few years, we've really kind of migrated away from that. I still think contact's really important, but I tend to leave it happen a bit more naturally now.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh yeah, that's mad. But that was also 8 years ago.
Yeah, the years go fast with that.
If everything I was doing now was the exact same thing I'd been doing 8 years ago, clearly there would be something wrong.
Yeah, I suppose probably get a lot of confidence, I suppose, from people getting better as well. You get a lot more information.
Lifting's a big weights.
Where when people are, you're continually right with stuff more often than not, it gives you a lot more confidence. That probably comes into that as well, where if someone disagrees with something you say, I'm like, all right, I don't really... The way evidence is currently in my favor, if we're talking about my coaching style or whatever,
Yeah.
But...
and the bigger that bank of success is, the more it just accumulates behind you,
Like, when you've held like one black belt win one world in judo or jiu-jitsu, or you've had one professional rugby player, we're like, that's really interesting. But then when it's like five professional rugby players, or you start, professional rugby players start emailing you, and then you're like, oh, okay, because they knew someone else who did something, or they're like, I really think you could help me here. Then you're like, oh, it's not that you're getting egotistical, you're just a little bit more like, oh, okay, maybe you're doing something okay.
Absolutely. And as well, when you're like theoretically you understand what it takes to get to a 200 kilo bench press, and then suddenly you have 10 people who are up with really heavy bench presses, then you're like, oh yeah, obviously that thing in my brain worked.
The thing for me for years though, say like 6-7 years ago, was that I always was pretty confident that it was basically the same no matter what level you got to, whether that be snatching 160 or 140 or benching 220 or getting a rugby player strong. Is kind of basically the same. If you're smart, is the same as getting a fencer strong or a swimmer, if you're able to adapt things, and then you start proving it. But then when I got someone to 160 snatch or got someone to 140 snatch, and you get 20, 50, 60 people to 120s or whatever, you're like, yeah, I'm just right. It wasn't that I didn't think I was wrong, it wasn't that I thought I was wrong, but I was ready to be surprised.
Yes.
Like, maybe something happens at 160 that's different from 140. But then you're like, actually, you know what? It's actually the exact same.
It's turtles all the way down.
It's turtles all the way down.
It's volumetric progression all the way down.
Like, if someone who's probably going to bench maybe 2.3 or 4 times body weight, do some outrageous other lifts, and it's just actually the same stuff.
Yeah.
It's actually completely the same. In fact, it's nearly even reduced further down to simpler stuff.
Yes.
So it's interesting how it goes.
Yeah. Thanks very much for tuning in. We're always available if you have questions, sikastrength@gmail.com. See you all next week.